What's up everyone? We hope you've been well. This weekend, Tracy and I are going to be doing a pretty exciting upgrade to our 2014 Toyota Tacoma, our overland off-road build Loki here, as we work through the process of finally cleaning up our electronics situation here in the truck. Too many times have we said the words, just one more, as we land another power wire to the battery terminal stud on our battery here. We're gonna start with installing the positive and negative leads. Now go ahead and yell at me in the comments below. I know I am due for some sort of electronics manager, but I'm gonna say it for the probably, maybe the last time. I'm just gonna add one more thing and it'll be fine, so we can clean up all of these wires. But for this one last install, we're gonna just be throwing one more ring terminal on both our positive lead here and our negative frame tap right here. We're gonna end that today by installing an electronics manager. We have an sPOD Bantam X for that. That's an 8-circuit electronics manager that really reduces the clutter and fuss of adding electronics to a vehicle, as it does all of the power distribution, fusing, and controlling of all of those electronic circuits by just one wire going between the Bantam and whatever control device you've chosen. So it's just a way easier way to install electronics. As well, beside that, we're going to be installing a Blue Sea fuse hub. Now, the reason why we're going to be installing that beside the Bantam is that this is only up to 30 amps, and not everything that we have installed on the truck should be switched or needs to be, or we have a couple of larger items as well. We have an 80 amp Goal Zero battery charger hooked up on the truck. Also an ARB twin air compressor. Both of those are 40 amp circuits. And those are gonna go and get landed to the fuse hub. That's just gonna be a cleaner way, get rid of all of those inline fuses, as well as just clean everything up all in one nice controlled spot there beside the Bantam X here. These two items are going to be installed on a PowerTray. That's going to keep the installation nice and clean, tidy, all in one area. It's a very well thought out setup here. We're excited to get through it, but we're also a little bit nervous because a project like this is bound to have roadblocks, as we might have forgotten something here or there. We have done a ton of pre-planning to set up for this installation, but it's gonna be great when it's done. We're just gonna work through it, and we hope we can work through and show you some of the considerations that we've put into setting up our electronics system as we install it here this weekend. The other thing this installation is gonna also show is how much of a difference it is to install something like this after you've been installing electronics versus installing new electronics, and how much easier that process is once the electronics manager is set up. So the new installations here are going to be a Baja Designs 20-inch light bar that's going to go up in the bumper here. That's going to complete our bumper lighting, as well as some Baja Designs rock lights that are going to go up in our Prinsu roof rack. That's basically everything that's going to happen this weekend with this upgrade. One last disclaimer before we get going here. We have chosen a ripping hot July weekend in Florida here. We're gonna have to just deal with the fact that it is really hot. I'm probably gonna be sweaty, but it's gonna take us just about the entire weekend to get this thing buttoned up and cleaned up. But it's gonna be so much nicer once we have that done. So first step of this process is gonna be getting our Bantam and our fuse hub mounted up on the power tray so we can begin cleaning up our electronics in the truck. So this here is the power tray that both the sPOD and the fuse hub are going to be mounting to. Power tray has a ton of different configurations available. This one here is for a Bantam X and a blank spot. They actually have one that has a Bantam X and a fuse hub set up for this. However, it's not the fuse hub that we picked up. The fuse hub that is on their website is the smaller fuses, and we needed one that had large fuse capability. So we just decided to get the one with the blank spot, and we would figure out how we were going to modify it ourselves to make it work for our situation here. So the first part about this is we're gonna get our Bantam mounted up, and this is gonna be just about perfect. These wires are gonna go right through these two holes here, and any of our circuits that we're gonna add to the Bantam are gonna just slide up through this slot here into these grommets in the back of the sPOD, and it's just gonna really clean this up and house the sPOD. Once we have that mounted, we're gonna have to figure out how we're going to lay this fuse hub out with whatever space we have left over. It looks like it's gonna have just enough room to be able to mount this fuse hub there. But that's how the PowerTray is gonna be laid out. Let's get to throwing it together. So there is the sPOD Bantam X mounted up to the PowerTray. They just did an excellent job of being able to reconfigure this for a super clean install. There's a really nice grommet in between the sPOD and the PowerTray. It just gets put right in between the two, being able to, this is gonna help keep a lot of the dirt, debris, and water out of the system, really help protect this. It even comes out with perfectly orientated laser cut holes for all of this stuff, and the screws. The PowerTray comes with longer screws to be able to mount it up this way. That way you can get rid of the fuse box mount that sPOD supplies this with. So that just is very nice and clean. Everything is coming out the bottom of the tray. Now we have the blank spot here for our fuse hub, and this is definitely a tight package. You can see it doesn't quite fit excellently, but it's going to fit up there just fine. We have a couple of different orientations here, but essentially this is the fuse hub that we chose. You have some normal size fuse slots over on this side here, and then you have some large fuse spots on this side here. You also then have your positive terminal to be able to supply power to everything, and negative terminals to be able to land all the negatives for the accessories and land your negative jumper to the battery or frame mount or whatever. So that being said, these are going to be some big wires, these are going to be some big wires, and this is going to be a big wire. A lot of these are going to be smaller gauge wires, so that's why we're going to orientate this like this. That way whatever is pinned up real nice and tight next to the Bantam here, it is the smaller wires having to navigate this tight little area, and I think there's just enough space to be able to fit everything through and into there. But like I said, definitely a tight package, but this is the setup that we're going with here. So let's go ahead and throw in some marks, get some holes drilled out, and get the fuse hub mounted onto the PowerTray here. So we mentioned earlier how this project has had us kind of nervous for the weeks leading up to it, and that's because of just not being able to plan for everything. You can try to pre-plan a project as good as possible, but you're bound to forget something along the way. And even just this morning, I realized that we had not yet gotten the hardware squared away to be able to mount this to the PowerTray. So right before we even got started filming the video today, we had to already make a trip to the hardware store. But so far, this little customization to the PowerTray has worked out pretty good. So this is how we have it mounted up, and this is definitely maximizing all of the space available on the PowerTray. So we've got this nice cover here. It's got a good weather seal there. And like I said, these are going to be for the smaller wires. Realistically, so far the only thing I think we have to mount to the small fuse size side here is going to be our Midland micromobile radio. So we will probably go and take our lowest spot available, run our wire down and just land it. And then now we've got just this little finger width valley to be able to just kind of neatly tuck our wires in. And yeah, we'll see how all that works out once we get to actually landing cables and getting everything set up and wiring things up. But for this step, we're done. We can go ahead and start cleaning up the wires in the engine bay and start working on trying to get this mounted up so we can then start rewiring everything. And for the next phase of this upgrade project, we need to clean up this area. Right here is where that power tray is gonna live. It mounts into 2 factory bolts right here. We have a conflict with our ARB differential breather here. We're gonna have to relocate that back a little further. All of this wire, this is all of our electronics situation here. This is just a messy clutter of things. Now, we actually have done a little bit of cleaning up before this video by adding the SDHQ battery terminal distribution terminals. This was a really nice, simple install, but basically it's just a new battery terminal to clamp onto the battery here, and it has a couple of dedicated slots and bolts to be able to land multiple things straight up to the battery. We went ahead and did this even though we were still gonna install the sPOD and the fuse panel, because there's still some things that we're gonna wanna just land directly to the battery. So we wanted to clean that up as well. Things like our winch, but it's gonna be nice to be able to get rid of stuff like this fuse holder from Goal Zero with a 6-inch cord here that really limits the possibilities. We have certain things like the other thing that's going to go to the fuse holder is our ARB twin air compressor. These inline fuses, we're going to be getting rid of all of these. And this is actually one of the things that kicked off the real need to do this for me and Tracy, is because after our last trip to the Georgia Traverse with the Overlandaroos, we came home and somewhere along the way I noticed that both our fuse holder and our fuses that were in there running the twin air compressors have actually started to melt. Now, I don't think there's actually an issue with the ARB twin air compressor. I think this is a slow overload issue, because actually for the last couple of trips, we have ended up being the airing up and down person for 1 to 2 vehicles on different trips. So I think it's just been an excessive use of the air compressor that has led to this. Those air compressors, they do actually specify a runtime, and we've been exceeding that. So, but this realization that we were having fuse holders and fuses melt in our engine bay, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. So that was one of the things that prompted us to want to clean this all up and really get on top of our electronic situation here. So I need to just go ahead and disconnect everything from the battery, pull all of the wires out, and really clean this space up so we can go ahead and start mounting our power tray with both the sPOD and the fuse panel now. Now that we've gotten the majority of everything cleaned up out of this area, we have our air compressor and gold zero wires over there, some wiring for the headlights, our Midland radio, and our old light bar here. We can now do a dry run here and see how this power tray is going to fit. We also had to move this ARB air breather or differential air breathers manifold down and over a little bit. That was a battle and a half because basically there's just about zero access to be able to get a hole drilled for some self-tappers down there. So that was a fun experience for Tracy and I to figure that out. But we have it nice and re-secured in an area where it doesn't seem to be conflicting with the power tray. So the power tray here is going to sit right in this area here, about like that. It's got some slots down here so it can move forward or back as needed. But you can see now this limits a little bit of access down below to be able to feed wires up here. We can gain a little bit of access by removing the fuse cover. That's going to actually give us a pretty significant amount of space there to be able to reach in under here still. But like I said, the power tray is going to sit like that. And then it also has a support bracket so that it can gain support. There's a bolt down there that it's going to attach to in the fender. So that's going to be well securely placed right here. But before we do that, we wanted to take care of a couple of other wiring issues here real quick. But I wanted to talk about them first. The first one being the only thing that we realistically have installed your classic way with a relay and a switch is our light bar. Now I'm talking about the 40-inch rigid light bar that's always been at the top of the truck. And this is the typical wire harness that you're gonna get with that. And this is what's been installed in the truck for years now. But essentially you have a relay that gets mounted in the engine bay. You have 3 wire harnesses that come out of that relay. Power in, you can see these are the wires that get landed to the battery terminals. There's an inline 15 amp fuse for that. But power goes into the relay, and then you have power out. And then there is also a separate harness that goes over to your switch. What happens is you feed power to the relay. You then send a voltage signal, a power signal, over to the switch, where when you make and break that connection, it sends power back to the relay and tells the relay, hey, go ahead and make or break the connection between your inline power or your incoming power from the battery to now send it out on the light bar. So that's what we're eliminating here, and what would have been nice to have the electronics manager from the get-go, because you just one time run, it's just an Ethernet wire between the Bantam and the control module that gets placed in the cab, versus if you have 6 to 8 accessories that all come with these relays, all of this feeding through the cab and all of that just to mount switches all around your dash and stuff, it starts to get really messy really fast. So that's what we're going to eliminate today. So Tracy and I have identified that this is the out wire. This is the wire that's actually going up to the light bar. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to snip that out. So that's a done deal. But this is what's going to get tied into the sPOD now. And then we're going to be able to just hit a button on the sPOD control module to just tell the sPOD to turn this on or off. The other thing that we're going to be able to snip out is, well, all of it. The other harness going to the battery terminal, the inline fuse, the relay, the output wire to the switch, all of this, no more. Now, I still have this wire hanging here that's going through the cab, that's going to the switch in the cab. We're gonna use that. We're gonna use that to pull our Ethernet through. So I'm gonna leave that for just a second, but we're gonna accomplish getting that Ethernet between the engine bay and the cab here. We're gonna get that taken care of before we go to mount the power tray, just because it's just gonna be easier to do that while we still have access, and then we can do that routing afterwards. So that's that. The other thing we have going on that's kind of unique to our situation is a while ago, our OEM headlights became very fogged. They look disgusting. And we replaced them with some really nice Alpha Rex Nova Series headlights. We have an entire video on the install, and we really like the headlights. One thing that's always been kind of frustrating about the headlights though is the day running lights. And it's easily one of the headlights' best features. The headlights attach by the factory harness. It just plugs into where the old headlights were plugged in. No problem. They turn on just the same with your headlights control at the side of the steering wheel. However, the day running lights, the orange band, white band, whichever way we have it, has always been a direct tie to the battery, and it gets its signal from an ignition fuse tap. Now, what has always been annoying about that is that you've actually never been able to turn the day running lights off. They're always on. If you turn the truck on, the day running lights come on. The only way to turn the day running lights off is to kill the power on this ignition fuse tap. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the sPOD to now control the day running lights, but it's gonna work just the same. We just wanna be able to sit in the truck while it's running and be able to turn them off. That would be nice, you know. It'd be nice to not have the day running lights come on while we're at camp if the truck is facing somebody else's camp. Whenever we unlock the truck, it's very bright. That's something we're gonna try to eliminate with the sPOD here. But what is nice about the sPOD is there are two circuits that you can have controlled by ignition, and you can basically add a fuse tap, and we're gonna just use this one. And we're gonna get rid of the majority of the rest of this for the headlights. We were a little confused at first because there was also this yellow wire. Come to find out, it's not used, so we're good to go for that. Now we just need to supply power to the headlights, and I don't know if I'm gonna keep this connector in or not. So for right now, I'm just gonna snip this as close as I can to right there. All of this headlight nonsense from Alpha Rex, it's gone. Isn't that nice? We're already cleaning things up. So we're gonna try to reuse this, and we're gonna feed our wire with that, and I believe we're good to get going here. You good? All right, I'll just kind of feed it nice and slow. All right. I think that's all we need. Well, I am super appreciative that we had Tracy here to help with this install, because her smaller than my hands came in handy, because these bolts back here are not fun to get to, but it's a necessity. And once you get them mounted up there, get this bolt mounted here with the power tray. This is nice and sturdy. That's not going anywhere. The fuse cover, or the fuse panel cover, goes on and off. Not that easy, but it does go on and off. Probably would be easier if I shifted this back, but I want as much access back here as possible. So this is the way we're going to install it. We've gone ahead and pulled in our Ethernet cable here. That's gonna route up into the sPOD here and plug into one of these two ports. And the other side of this Ethernet cable is just gonna get wired up into whatever our control module is. We have the touchscreen. We'll hook that up later, probably get to that tomorrow. Other than that, we had to reroute these cables. These are the cables going to the Gold Zero battery charger. And these are the two power feeds out to the ARB twin air compressor. So this is going to get a 40 amp fuse, this is going to get a 40 amp fuse, and this is going to get an 80 amp fuse. And those are perfectly laid out here for this because we're going to be landing them right here. Fuses get laid in here. That's looking really good. Now, when we did the rerouting, we added this gold shroud. It is a heat shroud, and that is because these two cables route all the way to the back of the truck, and as they leave the engine bay here, they're passing right past the exhaust manifold. And after a long hot day of wheeling, I've had a couple of times to notice that it's a really hot area, and this battery charger we're wanting to have pull as much as possible, and having that wire just constantly heating up is definitely going to add a bit of resistance, and it's going to limit the amount of power being able to flow from the engine bay out to that battery bank, so that we can have our battery bank topped off every day. And who knows, maybe that added resistance was one of the reasons why we were having issues with our fuse holders melting. But it's just one other addition. Hopefully it helps. Not really going to be able to tell whether it does or not, but we're going to imagine it does, because this heat shroud is rated to be able to reflect up to 800 degrees, and we bought that off Amazon. We'll link that product down in the bottom, or in the description, because after getting to use it, it seems like a pretty serious piece of product. It's got some fire resistant glass material on the inside and some reflective foil on the outside. So I'm pleased with how that came out and looks. So we're probably going to get to wiring up the rest of this tomorrow morning, because we're at the end of our day for Saturday here. But things are coming together nicely, and I am liking how this is starting to turn out. It's now Sunday afternoon and we have spent a good majority of the morning rewiring all of our existing electronics up to the new power system that we have installed here. Everything has come together pretty nicely. We've tried to keep everything as clean as possible. We're happy with all of the routing. We've had to make one other trip to the hardware store. We didn't have quite enough of the right size gauged ring terminals with the right size post diameter. It's a good idea to just have a good assortment, and that's what we tried to do before the video, but we just ran out of a certain size, so we had to go pick up some more of that. But we've cleaned everything up. We've re-terminated most of the wires and added some heat shrink to try to help keep better connections. Everything has wired up really nicely. Now, we did want to get the sPOD landed to the Blue Sea so that only one more thing had to get landed to the battery terminal. However, it was noted several times in the instructions to not add any accessories to the battery terminals, don't put anything else in line, and also to land the negative cable to a chassis ground, stated several times throughout the instructions. So we gave up on that and just landed everything as it was being specified in the instructions. We've done a little bit of initial testing because there was one thing that we had to figure out, and that was the headlights. This morning we started out, I was looking at the relay box that I cut out yesterday, and I was thinking we might have made a terrible mistake, but after troubleshooting it a little bit, it appears that we have the headlights working exactly how we want, and we're going to explain that in a minute or two. Right now I want to walk you through how we have everything landed and how everything is working on both the sPOD and on the Blue Sea, how it's all laid out, and how this is just a very nice clean system to now have on the truck. So this here is the sPOD. Here are the power wires for the sPOD. They come up in a nice clean 90 degree. You've got your negative, your positive. Positive has a little protective cap. And then you have all of your terminals for your switches. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4. In the fourth position here, we have our rigid light bar up top. This is the positive terminal and the negative terminal. Everything is labeled pretty clearly down on the chip below. But we're leaving space 3 and 2 available for the new lights that we're going to be installing. And then for switch 1 here, this is where we've landed the positive wires for the headlight. This is where we thought we made a mistake this morning because we were wondering if this was going to work without the negative that was attached to the other side of the relay box that we snipped off yesterday. However, the DRLs work just the way they're supposed to once we land this to a positive terminal on the sPOD. Now, what's interesting about switch 1 and 2 is that you can have them controlled by the ignition of the truck. And that's done with a power wire coming off of a fuse tap that is supplied by ignition, meaning that that fuse is not operated unless the ignition is turned on. Then this wire has power, which feeds this little terminal block right here. There are labels down on the chip to the side here, but there's an easier label to read in the instructions that it comes with. There's a couple of other terminals here that do different things, but for our purposes, we're just using that ignition. So that tells the sPOD that when the ignition is off, this one can be turned off and this one can be turned off. And you can turn that function on or off with the dip switch back here, which that's a very nice feature. So essentially we can have our day running lights just constantly on the sPOD, and when we turn the truck off, the day running lights will go off. We'll show you that in the upcoming testing section of this video, but for now, this is the layout of the sPOD. This is the Ethernet cable that is being run into the cab. This is the only thing that now needs to be run to the cab for all future switched accessories. There are 2 ports here. They're for daisy chaining Bantams and or adding control units to be able to have multiple points of access to the sPOD. But overall, very happy with how the layout of this has all turned out. Now let's look at the Blue Sea SafetyHub. It has a nice protective weather seal cover protecting all of the fuses down below. This is the side for the MIDI fuses. They're a specific fuse for this fuse panel. You can have up to 6 things having fuse power off of this block. This here is the Midland Radio MXT575, our 50-watt micro mobile radio that we just recently installed. And then these are the large fuse holders that we needed to have. I believe these are AMG fuses, but this is what we didn't like about the Goal Zero thing, and this is what's cleaned everything up. So this is the 80 amp fuse and the leads going to the Goal Zero. Their negative wires come in and terminate here. This is the negative terminal distribution block here. Then you have the 240 amps for both air compressors of the ARB twin air compressor. Those are just landed right here, and their negative terminal is here. Then you just basically feed the entire distribution block with one large wire coming from the positive terminal over to the battery and the negative terminal over to the battery. So this has turned out to be a really nice, clean way to have all of our non-switched accessories landed here. We've already done a quick test we're going to show you as well, but everything is working just the way it's supposed to. And then you can see right here, this is the fuse that came for the sPOD that we were hoping to land in this bay here. But like I said, the instructions clearly state to not add accessories, so we decided to just not do that. I'd prefer to not have this mounted up like this, but it's not the worst thing in the world. So we're just gonna leave that like that. And overall, we're very happy with the layout. There is a lot of space down here where we can kind of just leave wires kind of dangling and drooping to wherever they need to be. It's a very clean. I can easily fish my hands around everything down there. We're probably going to shift this back a hair when we're done with this to make putting the fuse cover on and off a little easier, because it's actually a very tight fit here. But now let's run through a quick test to show you everything working properly that we currently have wired up now. So now for testing of the sPOD, we have our sPOD screen here. This is the touchscreen that we opted to have for the controlling of our accessories. We're gonna just mount this up later with some RAM mounts to our Expedition Essentials T-PAM, and that's just gonna be a nice clean little setup. They have tactile buttons that you can choose to have in case you'd rather have a nice click button so you can feel around if you're not going to be looking at it. Tracy and I just wanted the touchscreen. There's some features that we wanted to be able to have with the touchscreen, but you can see the touchscreen will work. The truck is not on currently, and switch 4 is the position of the light bar, and I can now turn that on even with the truck not on. And obviously that's going to put a little bit of a drain on the battery, but in case you wanted to add scene lighting, which is what we're going to be doing with, you know, switch 3 there, but this can be turned on and off with the vehicle not running. Now switch 1 and 2 are the ones that you can tie to ignition, and switch 1 is where we have the headlights. So you can see I can turn that on and nothing happens with the day running lights. But we're gonna go ahead and turn the truck on now. And you can see the day running light sequence has begun. And actually, let's turn the truck off. And let's just put it in the accessory mode so that I'm not having to talk over the engine. That was probably a bad idea. But day running lights come on because I have the switch on. Now, this is how the headlights have always worked. The headlights still come on just like normal. We can turn that on. And they all work just fine. Turn signals work just fine. But if we wanted to sit in the truck with it running and we wanted to have the headlights off, there was never a way to turn off these day running lights now. So that's what's now nice, is that we can turn them on and off with the sPOD. And
we can turn the truck accessories off, we can turn the truck completely off, and they'll turn off the way they're actually supposed to, like they always have. Just like that. So that is everything working just fine with the sPOD. Absolutely pleased that worked out. I'm so glad that we didn't have a big mistake with cutting out the relay. You got to be careful when you're doing electrical projects like this. Once you commit, you commit. Worst case scenario, we would have had to contact Alpharex and get another one of those wire harnesses. But very pleased with the touchscreen and how that's all working out. This switch is just always going to be on so that it turns on and off with the truck. We just want that ability to be able to turn them off so that we can discreetly sit in the truck if we want to. But we'll mount this up later. Let's now walk through all of the accessories that are tied to the Blue Sea fuse hub. So this now is the back of the truck where we have the air compressor and where the battery bank lives. That's where it's connected up to that charger. The battery bank is pulling in about 300 watts. That's very good. Going to charge the battery bank up in about 2 hours from 75% to 100%. And the air compressor here is operated still currently off of this switch. Works just fine. One thing that we want to do at a later date is be able to delete this switch and just have the air compressor kick on via the sPOD. What you would do there is because essentially you have an incoming power feed to this and an outgoing. Once you connect the incoming power to the outgoing power, it tells the relays in the air compressor to kick on. So essentially we just need to supply the load side of the switch with a feed coming off of the sPOD. But we'll have to figure that out at a later date and get that working the way we want it. But for now, it's nice to just have the air compressor back working again, because it's been about 2 months that we've had it down since the fuses melted. So other than that, the Midland radio is working just the way it's supposed to. Let's now wire up our new accessories and see how much easier it is to install new accessories, since we now have a dope electrical system to connect everything up to. Here we are again at the sPOD. We wanted to show you how easy it is to wire up new accessories now that we have them installed. We've spent the last couple hours doing that because the accessories are mounted in the bumper, which is not fun to take off and on again, and wiring up the rock lights in the roof rack like we wanted took a fair bit of time as well. But we're here now. We have our rock lights. We've just got a positive and a negative terminal here. And the light bar, this is a Baja Designs S8 light bar. So it has 3 wires here. We have the black is our negative, the white wire is our positive for the actual light bar, and the green wire is another positive wire to a backlight feature. Just lights up a back glow of nice amber orange. We're gonna wire all those up to individual switches. So we decided how we wanted the layout. The first switch here is the headlights. We then want the rock lights to be number 2. And then we want the backlight feature of the light bar to be switch 3. And we want the bumper light bar to be switch 4. We then wanted an easy layout in case we wanted to be able to, or in case we wanted to hit all the light bars on real quick. We now have the lower light bar on switch 4 and the upper light bar over on switch 8. So when we go and hit the control panel, it's as simple as hitting 4 and 8 right on the same side. They're just kind of grouped together. So we still have 3 more ports to be able to wire up. But installing these now, the rock lights will be first. And that's as easy as getting them fed up through the grommet. And like I said, the chips down here are labeled. So this is labeled the positive switch 2, and this is the ground for switch 2. And those will just land right there. And then we can feed the rest of the wire down through the grommet sleeve. And now for our light bar. We're going to land the negative terminal with the light bar. We did some testing earlier to see that all this would work out properly, and it does. And the white wire will land to switch 4 positive, and the green wire will land to switch 3 positive. And that's now done. Aside from installing the device, running the wires, we now don't have to run wires into the cab to install separate switches, to come back out, to have separate fusing. It's all now protected and switched from the sPOD. That's it. That's how much easier it is to have this done right from the get-go to install new devices. We probably easily cut out 1 to 2 hours of installation and no cutting up of our dash needed. That's as easy as it is. Let's see if everything works up just the way it's supposed to. We'll throw the cover on real quick and then we'll turn it all on. If you're still with us to this point in the video, we thank you so much. We know it was not the most entertaining of videos. It was as detailed as we could make a video like this, and the reason why is because this is the type of video that Tracy and I were hoping to have been able to have found before even getting into this project. So we hope you have found valuable information throughout it, whether you're going with the sPOD Bantam X or whether you're looking to see about installing a fuse hub like the Blue Sea SafetyHub that we installed. We had no idea how they were going to pair together up on the PowerTray like that. We went in completely blind on that, and we think it was a match made in heaven. Our entire electronic situation is so cleaned up. I can't even believe how well this project has turned out. But we did try to make it as detailed as possible, especially with the sPOD, because we found a lack of sPOD installation videos out on YouTube. So we hope this helps you through your journey in deciding how you want to clean up your electronics. But to wrap up the video here, we wanted to test out one last sPOD feature, and that is the fact that you can connect up to it with Bluetooth. So it is connecting up right now. It is back connected, and we can go and run through all of our switches. We have switch 2, which is the rock lights, and then we have switch 3, which is the backlight on the light bar. Switch 4 is the bottom light bar on the bumper, and then switch 8 is our full-on up-top 40-inch light bar. The idea behind this, what Tracy and I are hoping to get out of this, is say it's late at night and you gotta go out of the tent, you gotta hit the restroom. It would be very nice to be able to hit on some scene lighting, just to light up the area so that you can just see what's going on around camp when you go to get out of the tent. It has been just a little spotty right off the bat, but so far that is working excellently, and we're going to be trying to keep up with updates as we get on in years with this system. So feel free to ask questions, ask, hey, how's it going? Have you had any issues with it? We don't expect to have any. We think it is a super solid system the way we have designed this. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and as of for now, Tracy and I are gonna go enjoy what's left of our weekend. As always, thank you for watching. Do more of what you love, and we hope to see you on the next one.
To learn more about us and find out ways to help support the adventures, visit our website, sunshinestatebikings.com. And to keep up with our adventures, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification button, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Sunshine State Vikings.